Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. We've got a great show for you today. It's sunny, it's 60 degrees, it's October. We got all the things going on. And we're going to be talking the black arts economy, separating them as a con. This is a quote from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, talking about how, when we approach economy issues and black issues in governance, sometimes we try to separate them out. Separate issues out as if they were something different, or something not related to each other, and they are generally related to each other. So, it's always good to make sure that we know they're related to each other. We've got a great show for you today. Aside from talking about economic issues and issues of race, we're going to talk about Frank Sinatra. We're going to talk about To the Polls. We're going to talk about vote by mail, and we're going to talk about centering black art. With us today, we have Laura from By George It's Laura, and we have Erin, Maria, and Annie from Next Generation Theater. I'm going to bring them on screen in just a moment here. I think I did a goof, and we're going to fix that right at this very moment. I laid out the wrong layout, but I'm going to bring, let's bring Laura up first. Just 1 second, please. And sorry about that. All right, Laura, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Thank you so much, James. She, her, hers are my pronoun. And I am a singer, and I am going to be performing in Philadelphia at the Drake Theater on October 19th and 20th, my cabaret By George It's Laura. Which is a tribute really to my family through the lens of my great uncle, George Abbott, who was a renowned Broadway theatrical producer, writer, and director.
Awesome. What is the theme of the show? What do you hope people take away from it? What do you want people to come see in By George It's Laura?
Thank you for asking that. Really, what I hope that they take away from is, even though this is a connection through story and song and lyric through to my great uncle, who had a really formative role in the creation of Broadway, that all of us are a part of a family tree, a family history. And, it doesn't define, we aren't defined by who we're from in terms of who we become, but it is a part of our story. And I think what people will find in By George It's Laura, first of all, for people who love cabaret, it's going to be a wonderful time. I have a fantastic music director in Stephen Gross, who has conducted both on Broadway, off Broadway operas around the world, and who also actually runs the George Abbott program at Temple University. But so, people who love Broadway music, but cabaret in general are going to enjoy this. And I do think also for people who are looking for a unique story from the perspective of, there's been a lot that's been performed and written and said about my great uncle George Abbott, but there really hasn't been a unique cabaret like this in terms of his legacy from a familial perspective. And, even though I didn't know him super well. I did know him because he lived until 107. But he influenced people who I loved and knew very, very well, including my grandfather and people like this. And so it's a way to also, in a sense, honor those people who I deeply loved, who are a part of this family tree.
Awesome. Broadway is storied. Broadway has a history, reputation, draw internationally. People have oftentimes either tried to emulate Broadway or be part of Broadway. There's songs written about it. What would you say, is the big draw? What would you say, makes people think of Broadway as something important, something that they want to be a part of, something that they want to promote?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I think it's important to connect with the fact that uh, musical theater is a truly quintessential American art form, right? When you think about art forms that started right here on these shores, it's not opera, it's not ballet, it's not classical music, it's musical theater and jazz actually. And even in this show, you'll see a way that I've been able to bring in those jazz motifs into musical theater. But I think Broadway itself, I mean, it is America. I mean, without Broadway, there would be no London West End, for example. And I think people uh, are attracted not only clearly to perform on Broadway, who are in the performing arts world and working at the highest of levels, but it's certainly a theatrical experience that brings so much joy to people's lives. So I think that is absolutely, the special draw of what makes Broadway special. And that really does connect back for me personally to my great great uncle because he worked on something like 120 shows on Broadway in New York in his career. So he was really in the formative years of its history.
Um, Such a long and storied history, obviously, deserves attention. And where can folks, we've posted the link, obviously, in our chat here. Where and when exactly can folks get tickets and see the show?
Absolutely. Well, you can go directly actually to the Drake Theater website. So you can go to the at www at thedrake.org, or else you can go directly to the ticket link site. But the performances will be on Saturday night, October 19th at 7 p.m., as well as Sunday, October 20th at 2 p.m., a matinee. Of course, wonderful if you want to get your tickets ahead of time, but you can also come day of or evening of the show and get them right on site at the box office there.
Awesome. I am going to go ahead and add to the conversation our guests from Next Generation Theater. Welcome, Erin, Maria, Annie. If you could please introduce yourselves, your pronouns, and what it is you guys do as a company. And we can start with we'll just start with Erin. Erin, I believe you're muted.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Erin Milone. I'm the managing director for NextGen. I'll kick it to Maria.
Hi, I'm Maria. I am the co-artistic director for NextGen. My pronouns are she, her. And yeah, and I also direct and choreograph and teach stuff. So that's kind of where I hang out. And I'll send it to Annie.
I'm Annie Byers. I am the other co-artistic director of NextGen. My pronouns are she, her. And I also direct and choreograph and teach. So we really do the same thing.
So, pre-show, we were talking a little bit about you guys wanted to definitely highlight that there's a lack of arts education in school, for school-age children right now. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What are you guys doing with arts education? How can folks help get that done?
Totally. Erin, do you want
yeah.
to talk a little bit about the lack, and we can talk a little bit about what we're doing?
Absolutely. So the three of us were very fortunate to grow up in environments where we were surrounded by arts education, but that's definitely not the same for everyone. Whether it's cutting music classes at the elementary school level or not having the resources to have multiple choral teachers or instrumentation teachers. Some schools have dance teams, some schools don't have that opportunity. So the diversity among what certain schools are able to offer is obviously an economic issue. So I feel like we're really able to fill that gap. How we do that is really up to Annie and Maria, but we do like to highlight that we are there. We want to support kids, and every study shows that arts education and what it entails is a fundamental aspect of a child's overall education.
Mm-hmm.
Learning to read music is a lifelong skill that will take you many places, and building confidence. I mean, I know a lot of lawyers who started out as musical theater majors in college, or a lot of defense attorneys. I guess same thing as a lawyer, but the public speaking aspect of all of that really stems from a solid foundation in arts education.
Yeah. I would think that the ability to, like we all artists go through as part of their arts education, the ability and method of critiquing someone and being able to pick a point and argue it, I think is probably really helpful there for lawyers. Go ahead.
Also, just the ability to take critiques and work on them as a person. I mean, we were always told in college that if you get that callback, that's really the ultimate goal. But you have to be able to take that, I auditioned, I put myself out there, and it didn't work out, but it might work out next time. That building of the self-confidence.
What are we doing to get arts education back into schools? How do we do that? How do we get people, either to recognize the problem or to participate in actively seeking out arts education for school-age children?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we can do is just to try to get them in to see their kids doing theater.
Mm-hmm.
When people see the impact that doing a program has on the children, I think they start to realize how important it is. Specifically for people that maybe didn't have an arts education growing up, I think that they don't see why it's important. They don't necessarily connect the theater with all of the great things that it does for kids growing up. I think just getting them involved in seeing it happen.
To that point, I find it interesting. I'm showing my age. I graduated high school in '96. We were starting to get to the point where our education administrations and boards of education were starting to de-emphasize the arts. I went to a school, Clearview Regional High School, where the arts were the focus for many years, and then we were moving, the school board was moving in a direction of de-emphasizing the arts, repurposing all the infrastructure that they had for the arts into sports and basic 3C's education. I find it interesting that now that that generation that grew up, that came into high school after me, is now starting to be parents, school board members, etc. And to your point, there's not a relationship with the arts in education, and we had over the last few years like STEM, and then the argument between STEM and STEAM, and then people not acknowledging or realizing how important the arts are into teaching science, technology, and math. How music is just math and stuff like that. I, not to lock anybody into a generational argument here, but from your perspective, it's interesting that you see that there's this de-emphasis or lack of experience with art in education. What brought you to that conclusion, that kind of realization? Like, what have you seen that you would say really reflects that the current generation of parents doesn't value arts in education?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they don't value it. I would say that it's maybe not offered at the school that their children are attending. I've had the opportunity to travel across the country with tours, specifically tours dedicated to children or shows for children. So getting to go to like random town Kansas and perform for a group of 5 and 6-year-olds who have never seen this before, and you're like, how have they like never had a music class in elementary school or kindergarten? And the introduction of learning an instrument not until 6th or 7th grade, because the schools don't have the funding to allow for it at the elementary school level, is very sad, because it's like learning another language. You need to start that skill at an early age. And I know the three of us come from backgrounds where we were in dance class, voice class, piano class from ages 2 on. So we were fortunate to have that. So how can we give that to this next generation of kids? And primarily all of our students are from backgrounds where their parents do support it, but we want to get out there and find the kids who need the theater, and their parents don't know how important it is. And just to sort of segue into what you were saying about the STEM, everything in theater is turning to technology now. If you don't know how to program a computer, you can't program a light.
Right.
Everything about building sets is about architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So we're melding these skills together, and your kid can come and sing on stage, but they might find that they really like what sound is, and what does sound design mean, and how do we create a world with that? And that all goes back to STEM. Like it's interconnected, and not recognizing that is doing a disservice.
Well, yeah, there's long been an argument that STEM shouldn't be called STEM. It really should be called STEAM. Add art in there into science, technology, and math, because as people from an engineering background will definitely agree that like there's a large element of art in any sort of science. As a parent of a 3-year-old, I've noticed that a lot of the focus of like these kind of things that we in my generation we would call extracurriculars has been pushed into like the parenting role. Like with us having to introduce music or art or anything beyond like basic painting and fine motor skills stuff. So as a counter argument, I guess, not that this is my personal belief, but what would you say to the counter argument that just as religion should be a household thing, or any other cultural thing should be a household thing, that is definitely controlled by the parent? What advantage or disadvantage is there to a systemic teaching of the arts?
That's a very interesting question. I think that there's so many different ways to look at the arts. There's so many different, like even if you just look at plays, for example, right? There's so many different themes that you can find. And like, yes, there definitely are places where the parents are, should have control over what specifically their kids are exposed to and when. And I think part of that comes down to the same as any level of teaching, really, is you have to use discretion and say, like, what is really going to be appropriate at this age, what's going to expose them to something that's helpful. Um, I think something that we're very careful about is that we want the kids to grow to form their own opinions about things. We never, as the teachers, want to be putting opinions on to our students. Or yeah, raising them to think the way we do. It's important that they analyze things on their own. And so I think that, yeah, my argument to that is that you're teaching the kids to analyze. And I think that that kind of falls back into anything that you do in art. Anything that's creative is also analytical. And using your brain to do that is going to be helpful in any skill you go into, really.
So to just give a button to what we're talking about, next gen theater in specific, are there any things that you would want the audience to do in order to help you guys bring the arts to students who might not, whose parents might not know that, like, hey, this would be a really good way to get your kid involved with math, or this is a good way to transition your kid into learning about English, reading those books that they don't feel like reading for the summer.
Yeah. Do you look like you're
Oh, I was gonna say, really, for us, just word of mouth has been really, really important for us. Just parents who have worked with us, and their kids have been with us, talking to their friends and saying, my kid's been doing this for a long time, or my kid just started and they're growing in all these incredible ways, has been a really big part of us growing and getting the word out to get more kids involved, and letting them see those advantages to arts education. But like the biggest thing in general that people can do, to help get programs out there and involve more people is just to find nonprofits like ours and donate what you can, so that scholarships can go out, and we can get more kids involved who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it.
And I would also say bring them, like if there's a show, bring a friend, because just coming to see it, just seeing it once can have such a huge impact. I think every person in theater can think back to the first time they saw a live production on stage and how that changed them as a person. And so just, saying like, hey, can I bring my friend Susie, like can make a big difference.
Awesome. Let me, so we posted also in the comments, chat here, your upcoming winter workshop for grades 2 through 8, nextgentheater.com/show. So I encourage people to take a look at that. So just kind of segueing back to, like, the history of the arts, especially in the United States, and how we deal with things here in the arts. I wanted to talk about a quote by Quincy Jones. Vegas in '64 was so racist. Belafonte was working for the big room for $17,000 a week. They were not allowed in the casino. They had to eat in the kitchen, sing, and go to a black hotel across town. So Frank said, we're not going to have more of that. So we came in, we had 18 Goombas put with each one of us, and he stopped the racism in 1 year. For Basie, Sammy, myself, and Basie's band, he stopped it man cold. That was a quote from 64 from Quincy Jones, talking about the scene in Las Vegas, which, like Las Vegas itself didn't have, a huge, like history. Vegas was essentially created out of dust in the 60s. We talk about the arts and, the value of the arts in education, but also there's a huge value to the arts in getting people to see the perspective of people that they don't always interact with. Bring it home for me, Laura, with the way in which Broadway integrated, the ways in which the folks in your history helped to bring about, unique perspectives. You were talking about jazz being a huge part. Jazz is a black music form, first, and nobody that performed jazz didn't do so without, black culture or, anybody in black culture participating. You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I mean, I'm actually really thrilled to be a part of this conversation because I think, to the point of arts being a part of a child's life and being able to nurture and shape them, whether or not they go and perform at the highest levels. I mean, those skills are so integral to a person growing as a human being. And yes, certainly in my family, the arts were very much a focus. My grandmother actually was a classical composer. I have a brother who's a poet. I mean, there was all sorts of encouragement to reach for those artistic aspirations. But I also, for me too, one of the great legacies of art, as well as, I mean, bringing it back to Broadway, indeed, is the fact that art can be so healing. And I think, James, you referenced even the healing that was happening with Frank Sinatra's decision. And the arts have such a power, not only to bring people together, but to heal and to help. And there's so much research now that really speaks to that aspect of the artistic journey.
What in the experience of NextGen Theater would you guys say has been, your experience with cultural crossing, cultural melding, exposing people to culture? Obviously, exposing people to theater, it's in and of itself is a cultural effort. What would be what lessons have you perhaps learned from your students? What cultural elements have you been able to bring into your own efforts?
Yeah. Sorry, I zoned out a little bit. Okay. That was a lot of questions.
So yeah, so sorry, the question is so rambling. It's kind of what has been your interaction with culture as far as, like, the NextGen theaters? What kind of culture do you try and represent? What do you bring into the classroom? What does the classroom bring to you?
Yeah, okay, cool. So like I said, one of the most important things for us is that we're creating a safe space where the children feel empowered. I think that especially when you're talking about groups that have been marginalized, is even more important, because being told that your voice matters and being told that people want to hear what you have to say and want to identify with you is a very healing thing. And it sets you up to be able, to share your culture. And I think that's something that was a really surprising joy for us actually in the last show we did. We just did Kiss Me Kate at the end of last year. And Annie and I are Italian. We come from a very Italian family. And within the show, there is a big tarantella, which is the traditional like Italian folk wedding dance. Um, and so like we got to take a moment to share our culture with the kids and to explain to them what it is and why we do it, and to really see how much joy it brought them was just like incredibly moving for us. They took to it so strongly. They loved it. They wanted to learn about it. And I think, we were fortunate that that happened to align with our culture, but any chance we get to be able to introduce them to something that they haven't been introduced to before and to show them a cultural tradition, I think is just an incredible thing. And it's nice to see how excited they are when they get to experience it.
What the second half of the question, what's the biggest lesson you've learned, the biggest cultural thing that you've learned about or adopted or been able to gain from your students?
I'm going to jump in. I think a lot of this has to do with our overwhelming support of the LGBTQ community. We make that a very strong effort, and alerting the parents that this is our belief system. This is how we intend to treat all of the kids. Whatever pronouns your child wants to use, we're fine with that. However they want to dress, we're going to accommodate that in any way we can, whether it's through our casting, our costuming. Making a safe space for them, I think, is one of the things that we've done and are continuing to do as to the best of our abilities. I had a parent ask about how overnight camp is going to work for my kid because they're not sure what dorm they would be the most comfortable in. And the conversation was, ask your child, have them tell us, and we will make that work. So we're really here to encourage, support, especially for our younger kids who all of a sudden, these conversations are coming up and parents aren't necessarily prepared for it. We're not necessarily prepared for it, but we're here with open arms to say, what can we do to help and support you? And if that means that you want to play the stepmother and you're going to wear a dress, we are all here for it.
I mean, I've been in theater since I was a little kid. The wearing a dress isn't, is part of character play. I guess, what your line of answer has made me think of is that, like these conversations are happening amongst the kids themselves anyway, and they're all developing this culture. We as adults don't always have ultimate influence of it. Like we like to think that, like they're gonna just adopt whatever we think is right, but they're not.
No, and they shouldn't.
Yeah,
It's important that we sometimes, like, something that's important to us is that we admit that we don't know everything.
Right.
We're there to learn from them too, and when we don't know, we ask. And I think that that's just in itself a culture that leads to them being able to share what they need. And I don't know, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think it's important that we as adults are able to say I don't know, and able to turn like, and in your example of like you ask your kid where they're most comfortable, obviously like they have some of these answers, and it's important to turn the communication both directions. I can tell my daughter don't play with that electrical outlet because it will hurt you, but I might not know like do you want to wear pants today, or do you want to wear a skirt today, or do you even like skirts? So that's a question for her, and to be able to, as a parent, have other adults, pass that message along. It's kind of important, I think, to, at least have that peer, I don't want to say peer pressure. I don't know what I would call it, but like the peer acknowledgement, I guess, of
Reinforcement
yeah,
of their like autonomy, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Well, and children are they're sponges, right? They're just
Mhm.
ready to absorb, to learn, to grow, and to be able to uh, bring the artistic experience to them at such a tender age where they're just taking it all in it's a beautiful thing to see. Then how they interpret it is my experience too.
It's also for us really interesting when we have the little fourth and fifth graders and they get to watch the juniors and seniors in high school and see how they've grown. And then they're telling us, like, oh, I can't wait to do that when I'm in high school. And that we really get to like go through this experience with them from first through 12th grade. That's really special.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk a little bit about how bringing arts bringing culture in a different way. There's the To the Polls effort by Conrad Benner and the Mural Arts organization here in Philadelphia. Mural Arts, for those that don't know, in Philadelphia is a nonprofit organization that does murals, sponsors murals on various buildings and various places throughout the city. Biannually, Mural Arts and Conrad Benner collaborate on To the Polls in Love Park. Excuse me. The project aims to bolster voter turnout. It's nonpartisan. I've not seen any, like any particular support for any particular candidate or anything like that in any of the murals that I've seen. Because, like a lot of the artists understand, as you've all been talking about, that, critical thinking is an important part of the arts culture, the ability to take a position, but be able to defend that position and understand what's going on and analyze it, etc., etc. This arts project obviously brings that culture to people in a very accessible way to me. It's outdoors in a park. How do you guys feel free to take turns in answering this or jump in whatever you like. How do you think of these kind of projects as important to culture in general? Do you think of them as influencing culture, or do you think of them as a delivery method of a viewpoint or culture?
I mean,
that
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No,
no,
go,
no,
go.
no. Well, I was just going to say that to me, the great thing about art is that whether it's a mural or it's a piece of theater or it's a cabaret, that everyone is bringing their own personal journey and experiences to looking and watching and observing. And so I think it only has the power, a mural, to help people look at it with a critical eye. And if that helps them in their decision making as they think about political life and life in general, then that is only to me a positive aspect of art's power to make us really see, not just look, but really see, and that's, it heightens our senses.
Go ahead, Maria.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that I think in this context that art is working more as a delivery system. And I think that that is a tool that is underutilized. Because it's much easier to get people to engage with something that they find some sort of beauty or excitement in. And art can do that and can, it can pull people in to then see what your message is. We have a really powerful platform in that sense. I think that, yeah, we talked about a bunch of ways that theater lends itself in the other direction, that it gives you the confidence to want to make your voice heard. It gives you, you know, it gives you the ways to, go through critical thinking and make choices for yourself. But when it comes to bigger projects that are kind of exposed to everyone in the open like this, I think that, yeah, it's being used as a delivery system to raise engagement and to get people interested in what the message is.
One of the muralists, Aloysius McLean, said in referencing why he was painting the mural that he was painting, said this wasn't just a right for everyone. People had to fight for it, from the women's suffrage movement to civil rights. So I wanted to create a piece of strong, recognizable American symbolism, encouraging people to use that right that people fought for.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's valuable to both communicate out. I think, interestingly, I find this interplay between the art and the artist and the society in general very interesting. I think it's very valuable that just as with children, we allow the communication to go both ways. I wanted to talk a little bit about how to vote in the upcoming election. Assuming that the value of voting is equal to to the folks that are encouraging you to vote. I know several people who don't want to vote. I'm not going to stop you from not voting. There's no way for me to, but I think it's valuable for people to vote. It's a way for you to get your voice out there without a platform. You don't have to have a platform to vote. You can express your own views through your vote. Even if you don't think that people listen to your votes, they do actually. Like Philadelphia wouldn't be the city it is if people didn't vote in a similar way all the time. There wouldn't be efforts to coerce or get or discredit your vote if your vote was valueless. So that's my PSA. But there's been some recent back and forths in the courts and in the Pennsylvania legislature and in the U.S. legislature about mail-in voting, voting by mail, however you want to call it. Billy Penn, a news magazine here in Philadelphia, recently published a quick guide on how to vote by mail. Definitely take a look at that. I'm sure Meg will post the link in our chats. It's a really simple process. Make sure that you're registered to vote. You can check online in Pennsylvania. You can also register in person at the Board of Elections, City Hall, room 140. And there are satellite elections offices. This is one of the tussles that has happened all across Pennsylvania, all across actually every battleground state, whatever you want to call it, states where the electorate is relatively divided on the kind of support that they give to different causes. And satellite elections offices are more prevalent in liberally leaning districts and states and organization and places. So satellite elections offices you may find more difficult to get to near you. But using these things, as we discussed last week, the use of government services is one of the only ways to guarantee that those government services will continue to exist. So using your right to vote by mail, using your right to vote, using the satellite election offices the use of these things drives the funding of them, drives the officials that write laws about them to either encourage them or discourage them. So if you need to use a satellite election office and it's too far away, write to your congressperson, write to your state representative, write to your local representatives and say, hey, this is causing it to be difficult for me to vote because I can't get to a satellite election office. There's not one near me or convenient to me. You can also register in Pennsylvania at PennDOT. When you go to do anything with your driver's license, they'll ask you if you want to register to vote. If you are already registered to vote, you don't have to re-register, but you can always register there as well. Get your ballot and fill it out correctly. The deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot is October 29th at 5 p.m. So those satellite elections offices, they will close at 5 p.m. on October 29th for registration and mail-in ballot applications. So you can do it online, you can print out the application and mail it in, or you can go to those elections offices, but so long as you have your application in by 5 p.m. on October 29th, you will get a mail-in ballot by mail. There is no requirement for a reason to vote by mail-in ballot in Pennsylvania. It could just be that you probably won't have time to visit the poll location on election day. It could be that you're going to be out of town. It could be that you had a sniffle or an itchy nose. So if you think that that your life is really busy, as mine is, as I'm sure you guys' are, feel free to apply for a mail-in ballot. You don't have to make it to the poll on election day or schedule that into your life somehow. You'll have to provide your driver's license number, the last 4 digits of Social Security number, or other approved ID when you apply for a mail-in ballot. So, contrary to folks raging on about, people can vote without ID or immigrants can vote without ever registering, or whatever other specious argument people want to make about voting. Voting is relatively secure, at least here in Pennsylvania, and through investigation has been found to be pretty secure all across the country. So get your mail-in ballot if you like. Go to the polls if you like, but make sure you're registered. And then submitting your ballot, you can send it in via U.S. mail. Several days. You need to do so at least a few days before election day, so that the mail has time to process it to the elections office. It must arrive at the city's election office by November 5th at 8 p.m. or it won't be counted. So you can also hand deliver it to the drop boxes, the elections drop boxes, by 8 p.m. on election day, or you can, if you're military or overseas for some reason, your ballot postmark counts as your submission deadline, and Monday, November 4th at midnight is the postmark date. And the U.S. mail generally is pretty reliable, and though there have been reports of mail-in ballots being not delivered or being collected in groups and intentionally rerouted somewhere else, etc. I would say that's a relatively low risk, but if you're worried about it, deliver it by hand or visit a polling location. Any thoughts? Any of you guys? We'll start with Laura and on voting, on the value of voting, on whether you want to get your mail-in ballot, if you want to vote, if you plan on voting at a polling location.
Well, I would just say I will share my profound belief in voting. It is an incredible right, and really, honestly, I look at it as a privilege. As an American, it's not something that people all over the world have. I actually grew up in Rochester, New York, which is the home of Susan B. Anthony, who obviously had a huge role in the women's ability to vote. But if you want my opinion about voting, I mean, it is absolutely essential to do that, for obviously not just you're wanting to support your community and your country, but for you as a human being to exercise what you believe in. So please vote.
And Erin and Annie, Maria.
I'm echoing all of those statements. Please vote. My husband and my sister are voting absentee. I will be going to the polls on Tuesday. I am tempted to stand there and let people ask me why I'm voting and who I'm voting for. Thought it would be fun. Sometimes I like to put myself in awkward situations with people. And really just like, it is the most important thing you can do on this one singular day. I understand that it's sometimes time consuming and it's just like, oh, I'm too busy, but like, really, come on. There is so much at stake in this election that it's hard to even comprehend on some levels. I am so thankful that I get to vote and so excited for who I get to vote for, that it's really like a no-brainer for me that this is like the top of the first thing I'm going to do that day, take my dog on a walk to the polling place.
Awesome. Annie? Oh, you guys are muted. Let me unmute Maria.
Sorry.
So I mean, echoing what everyone said so far, it's an enormous privilege to be able to vote. But it's also, talk about it, it's our most important duty as Americans to our country, to use our voice and help establish what our government is going to be like for the next 4 years. So I'll definitely be voting. I'll be going to a polling location because I live down the street. But people, where it's more difficult, you should definitely get your mail-in ballot and make sure that you get that.
Yeah, I live around the corner from my polling location. I still vote mail-in ballot most of the time just because I wholeheartedly support the idea of mail-in ballots, and I through that try to counter the argument that mail-in ballots aren't valid, because if anybody wants to tell me my vote isn't valid just because I mailed it in, I'm gonna I personally will have an issue with you individually. So Maria, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think they hit it pretty clearly, but yeah, there's something to me that feels there's something very special about getting to go to the polling location for me, about like walking up and being able to put my vote in. It feels like I am being a part of America in a way that like I don't entirely know how to describe, but I think it comes from going with my parents when I was little and watching them vote. I just, the importance of like having your voice be heard, because it's easy in a country that's so big, in a world that's so big, especially with the internet, making sure we see all of that. Like it's easy to feel really small and insignificant. But I really can't state how important a single voice can be. Our brother does a lot of activism, and what I've learned from him is that just one person like really fighting for what they want can make an enormous difference. And going to vote is how you start doing that, and not just voting for the president or the big things, but going in ready to vote for all of the things. Who you're voting for to be on your town government makes a really big difference in your life specifically, and that's not a lot of people voting. Like your vote's going to be really important when it comes to those things. So go in prepared, know what you think, and share that.
Just to wrap up the conversation, and with the last 3 minutes here, I wanted to talk about our op-ed written by Taib Smith for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Philadelphia's cultural institutions are missing a major economic opportunity when they fail to center the work of Black artists. We've talked a lot today about, the next generation, previous generations, how the arts have impacted people in a cultural level. I want to talk about, like an economic level. I talk about this probably more than any other topic on this show. I talk about the economic impact of the arts in Philadelphia. The arts and cultural sector has a 4.1 billion total economic impact in Philadelphia, including 1.9 billion in direct expenditures and 2.2 billion in indirect economic impact, according to the GPCA, the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance. And the arts creates more than 55,000 jobs across the region, so it is a huge economic driver in Philadelphia. It's a huge part of the economy. Obviously, getting children into the arts early gives them a leg up on being able to join this part of the economy and take advantage of this part of the economy. What Taib goes on to talk about is stop thinking of the arts as something that exists on the periphery of our city's economic strategy, because it has become de-emphasized with the current administration. Much as you guys are talking about the de-emphasis on the arts in education, how would you encourage people to use the arts in their daily lives, essentially?
I think one of the most important things that has happened in Philadelphia in the last couple of months was actually with the Philadelphia Opera Company and their launch of Choose Your Price tickets, I think is what they called it, where they were giving tickets for as low as $11 to go see an opera. I was able to go see The Listeners, which was their first show this year. Absolutely incredible. One of our board members was in it. It was poignant. It emphasized, there was a diverse group of people in the theater that I had not previously seen from attending opera and working in opera. That has been, I think, a huge impact in Philadelphia. We used to have programs in the schools, and I feel like it's going on Young Playwrights programs, where they would take kids from all of the different schools within Philadelphia and the suburbs and let them work with teaching artists from some of the regional theaters. And that was a nice way to get a group of students who wouldn't necessarily meet together and to see each other and work on something, which another super important factor in combining the economy and the arts education. But Philadelphia has a lot to offer, and we need to, it might take a while to seek it out, but it is there, and everyone has the opportunity to be a part of it.
I think anytime that we can encourage getting more people in the theater, like it's, there's a culture in theater where the tickets just get more and more expensive and the theater's half empty. And it's like, if we lean in to selling tickets at a slightly lower price and we can get more and more people into the theater, like you're going to make more money in the long run, because also those people might grow up, might get better jobs, might be able to at some point pay more for tickets and to go back. And you're creating a culture of going to the theater, as opposed to right now where sometimes it feels very elite and it's something that only a few people can afford. So I think programs like that, where they're letting people come in and pay what they can, make a really big difference.
I agree. I mean, to essentially arts and accessibility, that's life changing, that's community changing, that's world changing.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me today. Any last thoughts? We'll start with Laura and hit each one of you. Any last thoughts before I wrap up the show?
Just thank you so much, James, for the opportunity to share, to be a part of this conversation. I'm obviously thrilled to share By George, It's Laura at the Drake Theater, but also just it was such a joy to be a part of this really interesting conversation today. So thank you.
All right, Annie.
Yeah, Laura, I just want to say thank you so much for having us and letting us, bring our program to a wider audience and share about what we do. Given us a lot of really interesting things to think about in the future. So thank you.
Erin.
Echoing what everyone has said, this has been super awesome. It's nice to have a group conversation and bringing arts into culture and how it all connects. So thank you so much. And I hope we can see more people in the future.
And Maria.
Thank you again for having us and letting us talk about our program and why we think it's important. And I've taken a lot of really cool things I think we can bring back to the classroom and have some of these discussions. It's going to be a fun thing to bring to our students.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I'm going to switch to a one-up of me and outro the show. I got to run today, but I really have appreciated you being on the show. As soon as you see you go off screen, you can drop off the Zoom. But again, thank you for joining me. I hope to have you guys on again in the future. If you have any shows to promote or any specific things that you want to talk about, if you see a topic come up on the promos, feel free to jump in either in the comments or contact Meg and say, hey, I'd love to jump in and talk about that. Best wishes to all of you. I really appreciate that you've had this conversation with me, and I hope to see you again in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to the audience. I really appreciate you guys tuning in every week. Tune in again next week. We will have another great show for you. I'm working on bringing up that show for you right now. There it is. Okay, and next week we have Stephen Gross. Come on, calendar. Stephen Gross, Associate Professor at Temple School of Theater, Film, and Media Arts. And we will be talking about lots of current events and anything else that comes to our attention in the intervening week. If you enjoy what you've seen, please like, comment, share, subscribe. It's a low cost, no cost way to promote local independent media, promote these artists, get messages out there, and help everyone talk about things that you might find important. With that, I'm going to outro the show and bring up the title card, show you, and play some music. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. Hope to see you next week.